Hello everybody, I'm Den Haring. Welcome to my channel, Fish Den 365, and welcome back to Topwater Tuesday. Today we've got a special one for you. We're going to show you a modification to a particular bait that turns it into something I've never seen before, but it really does work. So this story goes back, I don't know, 15 years now. My dad was buying these topwater lures. This was a Spro dog. And he would take the weight out of them, because the dog is a walk the dog type of lure. It sits in the water with an attitude like this, and you twitch your rod and it walks the dog. Well, my dad had a different idea. He drilled a hole in the back, pulled the weight out, and then he would put a lip in the bait like a jerk bait or a minnow lure. And this one had a lip too, but you can see that lip broke off because this past spring at Lake Wallenpaupack, I had a giant striper blow up on this thing, bit it so hard that it broke the lip off of it. It was crazy. So I guess by now you're probably figuring out these work well for stripers, and they do. They work well for bass as well. So what ends up happening with this configuration, this is a bigger one, so it'll be easier for you to see. The Spro used to make a 100mm dog, and then a bigger one. This might be a 120, I'm not sure. But a lot of bait companies make this style bait. It's a little bit of a banana-shaped bait. It's meant for walking the dog. You know, you got the Lucky Craft Sammy. There's, if you want one of these baits to do this modification, probably the cheapest way to get one is to get on Jan's Netcraft. They have a bait called the Patty. Instead of Sammy, it's Patty. It's a very similar bait, and I'm sure you can make this modification on one of those patties, and it'll work the same way, because Spro doesn't make the dog anymore. I don't think they make this bait. They might, but I haven't seen it lately, so I don't think they do. But on the big one, same thing. My dad would drill a hole in the back. You can see, if you look at that carefully, there's like a little blemish there with the paint. Who cares? It's on the back. The fish don't see it. But you would drill that hole, take the weight out, put a lip in it. So what does that do? Well, now the bait sits on the surface like this instead of like this. And when you reel this bait in, I really haven't seen any other bait that works like this. The first time I saw it, I went over to my dad's place, and my dad was always tinkering with lures and tackle, and he was always messing around with the action of his baits. He had all kinds of minnow lures and topwater lures, and you name it, he had it. And he would test his lures first in the bathtub. He'd fill a bathtub up, and then he would tie a line to it and just, move it along in the bathtub. And depending on how that looked, if it looked right to him or looked good, then he'd take it to the water and test it on a local pond or at the canal near his home. And then, if it met all the criteria that he was looking for, then he'd use it for fishing. Well, when I came over one day, he was pulling this along in the bathtub, and I'm like, I've never seen an action like that before. I got to have one of those. And so he said that he'd make me one. He was catching fish on it. He made several of these things. So, he passed away in 2019, and my brother and I still have not gotten through all of his tackle. We still have multiple tackle boxes to go through, so I have more of these coming to me. But so the way this works, you're familiar with wake baits, right? Usually a wake bait will wobble on the surface and make a wake. Well, this bait, the way my dad had this thing going was it would stay on the surface, but it would do this as you reel it, like really wide side-to-side motion. And, it was the easiest thing. Like, if you just twitch the rod ever so slightly, you'd be walking the dog with it. Much easier than when the bait had the weight in it. It was crazy that the lip would help it move that way. But you could also just reel it straight in, and it would just have this really sick, injured look to it, where it would, especially if you did it slowly, where it would just go real wide swinging side to side. Not a lot of things in nature do that, I don't think, or swim like that, but it was so unusual, it tended to catch a lot of fish, and the stripers really liked it. Now, I've been out there on some nights where the stripers would ignore it, and they would hit other baits, but I've been out there on other nights where they would just clobber the snot out of this thing when they didn't seem to want the other baits. So I'm really glad to have these, because on certain nights, those fish kill these things. And so That's what happened to this one, where the lip broke back in May or June of this year up at Wallenpaupack. I chose this size for Wallenpaupack because the alewife, the forage there, is about this size. This bigger one would be good at Nockamixon and Blue Marsh, where the forage is a bit bigger. So I'm glad I have both sizes. But this is not a hard modification to make. In fact, this one is fixable. All I really need to do is take a saw and saw this thing out, saw a slit in the bait so that I can put that lip in there. My dad, on the bigger bait, he just used a lip from a Bagley lure, a rather round lip. And he used a smaller lip from another Bagley lure, this one, hopefully you can see that, for this lure. And so that lip at the right angle would make this thing go really, really side to side. And this is the angle. Both baits had the same angle of that lip. Hopefully you can see that against my background here. But anyway, not a hard modification to do. You just need a drill to get that weight out of the back. And the bait comes, with no lip, and he has it right below the cup part is where he would just take a saw and saw into this bait on an angle, and then insert the lip, and then he just epoxy the heck out of it and glue it in there, and you're good to go. And so this is something you may want to try. I was so excited about this when I first saw it, and this, like I said, this is probably going back 15 years now, that I actually took one and sent it to Spro, the bait company. I thought they might have an interest in modifying this, because you could take this bait with the lip on it and fish it like a jerkbait. It would go slightly under the water, a foot or two, but man, it would have this crazy jerkbait action where it would actually turn around and face you if you stopped. So I thought they might have an interest in it, but they didn't. They never did pursue it. I never did hear anything back from them. But I think they could have had an interesting bait if they would have tried it, because my dad knew what he was doing when he was messing around with these lures. So that's my lure for this Topwater Tuesday. Take yourself a Sammy or a Patty or a Spro dog type of lure, the kind of lure that has that little banana shape that's meant to walk the dog. Take the weight out the back, put a lip on it, and experiment with it and see if you don't catch some big fish on it. There isn't anything else out there like it. I don't see any other lures that act the way this one does, and so that's what makes it special. Hope you liked that video today. Hope you got something out of it. I sure hope you try it, and if you do, let me know how it's worked for you, because it's a very unique bait, and I'd love to hear back for how it's working. If you fish this in the right conditions, I can tell you it will work. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Hit that bell, that'll give you a notification for when my next video is coming out. We're all about the art and science of fishing, especially bass fishing. We're certified bassified. As always, may God bless your fishing endeavors.